one-way fighting.
Hello, you want through to One Way Fighting with Neil. Miles is unfortunately not with us today. I think he stayed up to watch the full event of the UFC last night, the fight night with Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad. So we do not have him right now. He will be on a little bit later to give his thoughts on it. So unfortunately, I'm just going to start the podcast reflecting on something. Marvin Hagler has unfortunately passed away at the age of 66. Marvellous Marvin Hagler, I mean, what a legend. All I can really say about it is, you know, he was middleweight champ. I just looked up his record. It was 62-3-2. It's really sad to see him go. Actually, just sort of, we were thinking of doing a Classic Fighter podcast, and he was one of the names that we were looking at. I think that basically we're going to do the first one on Marvin Hagler, and that'll be coming up in the next week. Looking back, really, I mean, a little bit of information on him, just, you know, anybody out there who aren't too familiar, I know some of the viewers won't be watching the boxing back in the 80s and the 70s. He was the champ running, middleweight champ running from 1980 right through to 87. It was nearly 8 years that he was the champion. He had the highest KO rate for middleweights. And if you haven't seen him, check out his fight against Tommy Hearns. It's a 3-round war and it's world renowned. One of the top fights, that and, you know, his last fight against Sugar Ray Leonard, where unfortunately he lost on split decision, and that's still contested to today. So, you know, a little story on Marvin, you know, his moniker is Marvellous Marvin Hagler. He was dubbed that by, I think it was Sports Illustrated in 82. I think I looked it up before just because I couldn't remember when. But he was in his amateur career at the time. And they basically didn't announce him as it. For some reason, they had a beef and they didn't announce it as it. So he actually got his name legally changed to Marvellous Marvin Hagler. So it's a little insight into the man he was. He was from New England, or the Boston area, and, you know, he did what he wanted and, you know, thought about his family and that at this time. Obviously, a full podcast will come up and we'll do the Classic Fighter on him. We'll leave all links in the description, obviously, at that time, just so you can look back at his fight catalogue, because the guy was just an absolute animal, old school fighter who took it to everybody. I mean, if you've got the highest KO rate in middleweight history, you know, that says it all. So sad news anyway. Looking on to the UFC. Wow, okay. Little spoiler alert. If you don't want to know what happens, don't listen. But Leon Edwards, Belal Muhammad turned into a no contest. Just a nightmare, really. So Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad, I mean, let's set it in context. They were both looking for the #1 contender spot to fight Kamaru Usman. I think I said that right, Kamaru. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was looking to me like Leon Edwards was going to be the victor. Now, he had a nice head kick that caused cuts and what looked like a good minute or two of, you know, sort of damage to Belal Muhammad, because he came in with this leg kick to the head and it wobbled him at the time in the first round. He looked like he had really good reactions in the fight, considering he had such a long layoff. I think it was like a 1.5 year layoff or whatever. That in itself, coming back and having those reactions, a lot of small head movements, you know, as they say in boxing, you don't have to flip and completely throw your shoulder in. It's just a matter of inches, centimeters, whatnot, that you have to slip the punch. And he looked like he had really good reactions. He was, you know, darting his head about. He looked like he had good movements. He picked off a nice 1-2 at one point. The only real concerns was when it went to the cage wall. You seen Belal Muhammad, who, by the way, was very much in the fight. He looked to be very comfortable, very composed. He got underhooks in, which begs the question, you know, even if Leon Edwards had won the fight, Belal Muhammad and Kamaru Usman, would it be a different story if that was Kamaru Usman on the cage wall? because obviously for me personally, there's a change in level. You know, when you get on that cage wall with those two. So where Bilal Muhammad looked comfortable on the cage wall, let's just hope that's due to the layoff that Leon Edwards has had. If he does, you know, win a second fight and, you know, go on to fight him at some point, because I just feel if that was Usman, as soon as it went to the cage wall, it might have been a different story and he might not have looked as comfortable. But again, he's come back off a long layoff, so, you know, it's just an observation more than anything than that. It's not necessarily a long-term concern. Obviously, it's a different fight camp to train for Usman, and, you know, we'll have to see if that happens. So there were two eye pokes in the fight, both from Leon Edwards on Bilal Muhammad. The first one didn't really cause much damage. It was a short stop. The second one, gross. I can't stand anything to do with my eyes. It looks like he didn't pick, he did it accidentally, but his finger's gone in below the bottom eyelid and pulled, by the look of it, on the pictures that people are posting on the internet right now. Not entirely sure on the damage that it's caused long term to Bilal Muhammad. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But the fight's done as a no contest. So that's not like a disqualification. That's effectively saying the fight never happened. We're not supposed to reflect on it. Even if one of them was looking like they were clearly winning, you can't then go on and say he's the contender for the next fight. Supposedly, we should be seeing them fight again. Obviously, that'll be dependent on how Bilal Muhammad comes out with his injury. You know, if Leon Edwards is ready to fight in a couple of months and Bilal Muhammad's had to take time out because of his eye, or he's got long-term damage or anything like that, then obviously that mightn't be the case. For me, he was very much still in the fight. I felt like Leon Edwards was probably leading, but it was round one. It was round two when the eye poke happened that caused a stoppage. And to be fair, there was no way he should have really fought on. If they'd have let him fight on, he would have been fighting with one eye. And he looked like he was in a great amount of pain. So kind of a sad way to see the main event, because what you've got to consider now is, what are they going to do to try and stop this from happening again? Because, I mean, you can't really say. You can change the rules from them putting their hands out. The rules are quite clear. You can have your hands out like that. Just don't be sort of, not when it's on their face. So it's interesting to see Trevor Whitman. I think it was Joe Rogan podcast he was on with Gaethje, and he was suggesting that they've got those gloves which form a natural sort of curvature to the hands to keep them like that, so that you're more gripping and more likely to punch. Are they the answer? The problem there, though, obviously lies with the fact that the UFC have the patent on the UFC gloves, and they want the patents for the gloves if they do a deal with Trevor Whitman. And you've got to then think, is that ever going to really occur? Because is he going to give up the patent to something that they really want? And are they willing to let him have the lion's share of the money made? Because, I mean, I've been to amateur events and stuff like that where they've used the UFC gloves with the UFC branding. They sell on the internet. It's a massive money maker for them, just having the gloves like that. And to give someone the lion's share on a deal with regards to the gloves that they use in their fights, you know, I just don't see them doing it business wise. I mean, you only have to look back at the Reebok deal, where they basically stopped all the sponsorship because Reebok wanted them to wear all their clothes and not cover any of the signage. So again, it could be something we see again in the future on a headline event. And it's kind of sad, really, because people have geared up to watch that fight. They've got a headline go ahead. It's a non-contest and potentially have to redo it. Now, do they give them another fight night headline to rematch, or do they just go as a fight below the main event just to get it out the way? And it needs to be addressed, really, in some way, shape or form. Obviously, the way to do it is up in the air, whether it's a rule change or whether they just say it's part and parcel of the game. Because we could be watching the next time they fight, one of them fight Usman. And I'd rather see Usman fight next than have to watch the same fight twice because of an eye poke. Just a bit deflated after expecting a good fight, really. And Bilal Muhammad, is the same. I've seen a few of the posts he's put out this morning, and Leon Edwards looked a bit distraught afterwards, because there's always that stigma that you've done it intentionally, even though I don't believe for a second that he has. I think when you watch it, you can see clearly that he's not intentionally done it, and it's not the way he's wanted his comeback fight after a bit of a layoff to go. So it's sad all around, really. It's not what we wanted. So yeah, I mean, there are my thoughts. Ryan Spann had a nice little TKO, heavy hands last night. There were a few other good fights, but it was not a massive event to write home about. I'm going to watch it again later on, because I've got a feeling that Miles is going to want to catch up later. So just a quick one, really. I just wanted to put something out there because of the sad news about Marvin Hagler. Obviously, thoughts with his family and all that. And yeah, deflated for a Sunday morning. So with that, make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you make your mum breakfast, tea, dinner, clean her house. It's Mother and Sunday in the UK. Happy Mother's Day, Mum. Yeah, so hopefully you'll see me with Miles next time. It won't just be my bored and old face. Have a good day, everyone.
One way fighting.